The previous basket is under review.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Basket Under Review podcast. I'm your host, Eamon Brennan, a buzzer at eamonbrennan.com. That's my newsletter. Go check it out. Also here at Basket Under Review, coolest college basketball website on the planet, and much more besides. We're back again with another episode with our buddy Tate Frazier from The Ringer. We're going to talk about the games that we just watched, which were one massive blowout in Duke's case, and one, significant blowout in Arizona's case. And we're going to talk about those games, but also the wider trend in the last week or so of the best teams in the country having statement victories and really rounding into form, and kind of where they, with 1 week left of the regular season, a week out from Champ Week, where we kind of look at some of these national title contenders in recent college hoops history, especially after last year where we had a clear top four in the sport. I think a couple of these teams at least rank pretty favorably relative to those. And maybe that's just the era we kind of live in now. We're also going to talk about Miami of Ohio and the discourse around Miami of Ohio, which I find very funny, but which got a grenade thrown into it over the weekend by Bruce Pearl. Just not a real conversation in terms of Miami needing to get into the tournament, although the conversation continues to happen even as they keep winning games and remain undefeated. So it'll be fun to pull the strings out of that one a little bit. And then we're going to talk about our guy, Chad Baker-Mazara, the end of an era. The 26-year-old college basketball player was dismissed by USC this past week. We're going to talk about why that happened, what Gilbert Arenas said about it, my personal enjoyment in a somewhat ironic way of Chad Baker-Mazara over the years. And just a truly a sad day for college basketball all around. And I'm not really being super serious about that. But before we do all of that stuff, we need to, as ever, remind you, go to basketunderreview.com. You support this show for $10 a month. You help us out with what we're doing, but you also get access to everything that's written on the website. You get access to the Discord, which is a great place to get all of Trilly Donovan's breaking news and hang out with people 24/7 talking about college hoops. It's a really great value. It's been a great website. We're rounding out the end of the first season of just constant daily content, and it's been a really fun thing to be a part of. So go check it out. Basket Under Review. Thanks to everyone there for everything they're doing. And also check out our presenting sponsor, Homefield, homefieldapparel.com, the best place in the world to get college athletics apparel. They just launched a brand new collection. It's called the Hoop Society collection, the Hoop Society drop. The Campus Court collection is the thing you click on if you go to their homepage. I was looking at it today. There's an Arizona hoodie with the old school 80s logo with the sun going over the mountain with the lines through it and the cactus in front. That may be on the list. Lots of great stuff. There's a Creighton pair of shorts that has the Jays logo, the script in front of the basketball, the sort of classic Creighton logo that they roll out every so often. Lots of awesome stuff in here, very basketball oriented, and some really cool gear. And it's going to be well made, well constructed, high quality materials, all of the home field stuff that you're used to. So go check out homefieldapparel.com. Check them out at the Final Four. They'll be there on the last stop of the home field house hoops tour that they've been doing all season. All right, Tate, we're into it. We've had some big wins. Obviously, we had Arizona just finishing up a pretty convincing win at home over Iowa State, beat Kansas over the weekend. Duke is just throttling everything they see in their path at this point. UConn last Wednesday, as mentioned, 72-40 over St. John's, which is a weird game that maybe we can talk about a little bit because I haven't talked to anyone really about it. I haven't written about it yet. It was a weird one in that UConn was awesome, but also St. John's looked like they wanted to be anywhere else in the world the entire night. It was kind of you understood why Rick Pitino was so mad and didn't do media after it, even though he should have. But Michigan winning at Illinois convincingly, not effortlessly, but almost effortlessly. We've had a lot of these games now that have set up these teams that we've talked about all season, including Florida against Arkansas. Just a lot of really impressive performances from teams that feel like they're really rounding into shape to the point where maybe as we get into the later, the last week of the regular season, we're looking ahead to the postseason. It feels a little bit like we could have something close to a repeat of last year where it's if you're filling out your bracket, it's always smart to be chalky, but it might be extra smart to be extra chalky this year.
Absolutely. Welcome to March, the best of times, and we have the best teams in basketball playing their best basketball at the best time of the year, which is really encouraging for the sport because there's some times where you have teams that look great, especially out of the gate, and then, injuries happen, right? We've had some tragic injuries, but there's been some bounce backs like, Texas Tech, perfect example. They lose Toppin, but they still are playing at a very high clip right now. They had a nice win. We'll talk about that a little bit. Obviously at Iowa State, Hilton Magic, defied by Grant McCaslin and Donovan Atwell, who shot out of his mind in that game. But again, I feel like we have a solid top five. We know who they are. Duke is probably the leading, line when we talk about these top five teams, but every single one of them has sent a message all the way across college basketball and into the casual fans' spheres as to why they belong in that conversation to win the national championship. Arizona, the latest that we saw tonight. Duke before that on the road in Raleigh. UConn, like you said, with St. John's. And then Florida, what they did with Todd Golden having his Coach Calipari chest bump moment, not literally a chest bump, but basically at that point, he sent a message to Calipari. Calipari was so shocked by it that he thanked the official when Golden got teed up, which I thought was a nice moment. You don't see that much, some graciousness on the side of John Calipari, but that's where we are. All five of those teams are in the mix. All five of those teams look like teams that can win the national championship. And when you have two of those teams that have won the most recent national championships, talking about Florida and UConn, you feel really good about where we are. And Duke's been knocking on the door. Obviously, they've been right there. And Arizona is a team that's been trying to get back there since 2001. So just a lot of great storylines, and I'm excited to talk about them all, man.
Yeah, so we should start with Duke just because they beat the brakes off NC State at NC State. And, there was like a solid 5 minutes early in the game where NC State was kind of keeping pace, making some shots, clapping up the fans. The environment was going. Before the show, we were texting like, talking about what we wanted to talk about tonight. And I was like, I'm kind of a little bit more interested. Maybe it's just because we've been doing so many Big 12, Big Monday games the last few weeks where they've demanded like immediate reaction, which is sort of like, I've seen Arizona and Iowa State a gazillion times. Like it'd be kind of more interesting if NC State's, if the Pac fans get up and lathered for Duke coming to town tonight. And other than that,
update, they did not. Yeah,
they did not. They did not. And it was funny too because Will Wade made a comment before the game, as you brought up earlier before the show about like, we need 6 guys to be effective against them. Post game, I went and looked for a transcript of his post game press conference, kind of hoping there'd be a little bit of the Will Wade that we've been getting the last few weeks of like, kind of crushing his team a little bit or being angry or being like funny or whatever. And there just wasn't. It was just sort of like, yeah, what, look, the levels are just, it's a different thing. I mean, he called Duke like the best operation he's ever seen as a college basketball coach. We know where the standard is now. Our eyes are wide open to that. And what we need to chase. Duke's whole operation was incredible, unparalleled to anything I've seen as a coach. He threw out some junk defense and said that if they didn't, Duke would have scored 120 points because everybody would have gotten fouled out. And he's probably not super far off. I mean, Duke is just, look, they are at a place now. For example, on Saturday I went out for the Duke Virginia game to like have lunch, have a couple drinks with my buddy who I hadn't seen in a while. He's a big Virginia fan. So I was like, yeah, let's go watch the Duke UVA game at a bar in Alexandria here. And it was kind of nice because the game was over so quickly that we could just kind of like talk and catch up and we weren't like hanging on the,
nice hangout. Yeah.
It was just like a chill hang. Yeah. It was just like, it was, and he's like a diehard Virginia fan and the kind of, reacts to the games in such a way that his wife is like, all right, game starting. I'm out. See you guys later. It's nice to see you, Eamon, blah, blah, blah. And like, it was just a very chill social experience because there was no stakes after like 8 minutes. Right. And that's just kind of where Duke is right now. Like they just are beating everyone that's not Michigan by a gazillion. And, their Ken Pom number now in terms of their sort of adjusted net rating is above 40. The last time a team did that was 1999. That was that Duke team with what was it, Elton Brand and Jay Williams and whoever else, like a classic, incredible Duke team that didn't end up winning the national title. Last year's Duke team, which still finished number one at KenPom at the end of the year, was 39.29. Like, this Duke team is above that team now in terms of adjusted net rating. And they're really, 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 really good. And they just don't do anything particularly poorly. And I just don't know, it's one of those things again. And this is the larger theme of the conversation we're going to have about a lot of these teams over the past week, the past 3-4 days, just like the wheat is separating from the chaff in certain ways. And you see a team like Duke, a team like Florida, a team like, obviously UConn at St. John's, all these teams, Arizona, separating themselves even further, even after we kind of had already come to this conclusion.
Yeah, it does feel like a Usain Bolt race where, early on when they first get out of the gate, everybody's kind of neck and neck, and then all of a sudden he separates at the end, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the difference there between the best.
The guy was jogging early. And now,
yeah, he's like, I'm just kind of getting into
the
a
last
flow
2
state.
seconds of the race.
Yeah, that was Duke at the beginning of the ACC season where they looked a little bit more, I guess beatable, I guess would be the best word for it. Like there was some, hiccup games early on, but then they've just been dominating. I mean, the margin of victory in their victories, obviously they had the loss to North Carolina in the ACC, but other than that, they've been winning by 20 plus points pretty regularly. And they do it like the phrase death by 1,000 paper cuts. I feel like Duke is death by 1,000, like full on stab wounds. You know what I mean? Like they kill you just in so many different ways. And they execute you to death. And defensively, you mentioned the Virginia game. I thought what Odom said afterwards and what DeRitter said afterwards was kind of speaks to what this team is defensively, which I really feel is the story with this Duke team. Yes, they execute after timeouts. Yes, they execute baseline, sideline. They do all the things they're supposed to do. Again, they're a monster in that sense. But in reality, defensively, the ball pressure and the size and the physicality, I just don't think that you can really, yes, you can practice and scheme and do your best to try to simulate what you're going to see. But once you get into the battle with this Duke team, it really wears on you. And you saw Virginia, like they were seeing ghosts all over the place. Guys that, Jakari White, for example, guys that have been able to knock down, he's one of the best contested jump shooters in the country. But against Duke, he's not, because he's even more, worried about the size and the length of Duke. And they just keep throwing different guys at you. And the depth of this team, the fact that they never really get too high or too low. And I do give Cam Boozer a lot of credit for that. I mean, I think he's one of the most even-keeled superstars we've really seen because he doesn't really break. Like in the NC State game, he gets this gash on his arm and they cut to him on the bench and he's like laughing about it, but in a very just kind of calm and composed way. Like he's not like heightened at all. It just kind of feels like, this is funny. They cut me. And he makes a joke after the game. He's like, the Wolfpack got me, like with a little gash here. It just kind of feels like this Duke team maybe is more. I feel like last year with Cooper Flagg, because of the expectations, he's the obvious number one pick. He's got to have his superstar moment. There was a little bit more of tightness around kind of the whole group. But with this Duke team, they almost feel so connected as a group, and Boozer is so assimilated into the group that it just feels a lot harder to crack them. And I actually thought Virginia did a pretty good job on Boozer. He didn't have his best performance, and they threw bodies at him, but it didn't really matter because Isaiah Evans comes out of the gate and hits some huge shots early. That opens the floodgates, and the rest is history. They dominate that game. So, like I said, death by 1,000 paper cuts, death by 1,000 death blows, whatever you want to call it. This Duke team is very different. I think Shire has learned his lessons from the losses throughout the years and kind of seen the pitfalls of when things go wrong. And, look, if you're Carolina looking forward to Saturday, you're the old version of Duke, you might say, like the Coach K version of Duke, I should say, like 2022 Duke, you would have a little sense of they might be feeling themselves a little bit too much. This Duke team doesn't have that. Like, I don't really feel like this team will get on that level where, like, they're like, man, we're so great. Nobody can beat us. They almost have a little bit of a blue-collar mindset with what they do, and I just think that makes them even more dangerous. I'm not saying they're better than 99. I'm not saying they're better than last year's team on a neutral court. We're talking about Bruce Pearl. We'll do the neutral court conversation with Miami of Ohio. But they're just a really, really difficult team to deal with. And, again, they execute, they don't slip up, and they're not going to give you anything. And that's hard to deal with for anybody in college basketball.
Yeah, so like not only are they one of the most talented teams in the country, if not the most talented team, and huge at every position, as we saw against Michigan, and they have Boozer. I think what you said about the comparison to last year's team is really interesting, because you're right. I mean, remember like the shit that Flag caught early in the year for like spinning back into a couple defenders and like losing the ball
Kentucky
on key
game,
possessions,
right.
or the Champions Classic. There was one other game early in the year. I can't even remember which one it was, but this was like the top highlight on SportsCenter, right? It was like, it was, people were fired up.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. People were fired up for a kind of like Zion Williamson level. You have to watch every game this guy plays. The machinery got churning into motion with every Cooper Flag performance or mistake or whatever it might be. And he eventually got to the point where he was pretty unimpeachable. And I think has mostly justified that. And then obviously you have Con Knipple, who emerged throughout the season as an incredible player and has emerged since, in the NBA as like the top contender with Flag for Rookie of the Year. This team is steadier, and I think because Boozer plays the way he plays, which we've talked about a bunch of times, because he's not this hyper flashy, oh my God, this guy's a future pro, obvious, jumps off the screen type of guy, because he's sort of quietly productive and just makes all the right plays. There hasn't been that same level of scrutiny and constant hyper attention to every little thing that he's doing, right? We're just everybody just kind of going along with it, coasting with it a little bit. And maybe it's because, you have the Darren Peterson situation, you have AJ DeBonsa out at BYU, you've got all these other freshmen that are high level guys, and Flag didn't really have that in that class last year. But there's been a relative smoothness to this Duke season that has not had any emotional ups and downs. And then you combine that and all of their talent and all of their size with the stuff that Shire has done. And I think, look, going back to his first really 2 years as a coach, it did feel to me, and I've said this before, it felt to me like he was taking a best practices like handbook of, okay, here's all the modern stuff that really good coaches run this stuff, and here's the balance you need between interior and perimeter shooting. And here's like all of the sort of like, if you told ChatGPT, like, hey, give me a good college basketball strategy, I've got the best players in the country, or some of them, the talent level wasn't nearly as high in his first couple seasons, even though it was high. It wasn't like where it's been, last year or this year. But it was sort of like, okay, what's the consensus view of what we should be doing that's a little different from what Coach K was doing tactically, right? And I feel like this, last year especially, with the way they changed up how they were sort of flowed on offense, and his willingness to put the ball in the hands of Flag as kind of a point forward, and Knipple doing all the stuff that he was doing, playing off the ball and on the ball last year, it just kind of changed things around a little bit and made them flow more offensively. And I feel like he's carried that over to this year. And now you look at some of these stats, and this is from a Twitter user at JMan's Takes. I came across this over the weekend, not J Kyle Man, by the way, J-Man. Different. A lot
person. Of men out there, a lot of mans,
a lot of J mans. But Duke's per possession rank on baseline out of bounds is 100th percentile. On sideline out of bounds, 100th percentile. After timeouts, 94th percentile. Last 4 seconds of the shot clock, 97th percentile. That's all via synergy. That is ludicrous. And part of that isn't the effect of like, they're probably 100th percentile on most play types, because they're just really good at basketball. But that execution and his growth as a coach has now elevated this team to like, holy cow, there's really like Will Wade said after the game, there's not a whole lot about the entire operation, from roster building to execution on the court, that isn't working at an extremely high level for Duke right now. And again, they're putting up these numbers against a much better ACC. This is not the ACC of a year ago or 2 years ago, where it was a down conference, and you kind of expected Duke to blow out a lot of these teams the same way that Gonzaga would blow out a lot of West Coast Conference teams as they go through the year. Doesn't mean that's a bad team or that they're overrated or anything like that. It's just they're not getting the night-to-night competition. Duke's doing this against a team like Virginia, who's going to be a 4 seed or whatever. They're doing it against an NC State team that's pretty safely in the tournament, even if they've had some bad losses along the way. Like, they're going to get in. They're like an 8 or 9 seed. Like, look at the rest of the bubble; it's a mess. Like, they are absolutely destroying solid teams and elevating themselves to a level where they, last year we made this huge deal of these 4 number 1 seeds and how good they were and how they ranked historically over the past 10 or 15 years in terms of their underlying numbers. And that kind of all played out in the tournament. And there weren't a ton of upsets in last year's tournament across the board. All 4 number 1 seeds made the Final Four. And it kind of vindicated everything we were saying about the tournament and about the season all the way through. And I don't know that there's been that same consensus with this year, but I feel like now we're starting to get there. And to transition a little bit, like Michigan takes the loss to Duke that we discussed on last week's podcast, and then turns around and against the team that I thought coming into the game kind of matched up with them pretty well in Illinois.
Tallest team in the country. Yeah.
Tons of size, tons of front court guys you can throw at some of the stuff that Michigan does. They again showed that there's a different level to the very best 2, 3, 4, whatever, 5 teams in the country that you want to rank. And I think Illinois would consider itself among that group. And then you see them play against Michigan. You're just like, sure, there's a 5-year age difference, but Yaxel's bullying Keaton Wagler right now. You know what I mean? Like, this is a problem. And these guys are just a little different. I feel like that's where we are with the top teams, and Michigan's win over Illinois was another case in point there.
Yeah, I had a front office guy text me during that Michigan game. He said there's a difference between big and tall. And I think that was the perfect matchup there between Illinois and Michigan, especially when you saw Yaxel, who you got to give him a lot of credit. The fact that Yaxel was like, okay, Keaton Wagler, I got you. Like, I'm picking you up. And when he was,
it was full court. It felt bad for him.
Right.
I was like, you're bullying a child.
It did. It looked like 2 different, and obviously Yax was an older player, so I mean it is like, a 4-year gap. But at the end of the day, it looked like men against boys, and Yaxel took that matchup personally. Wagler just felt like every pass he made was laborious. Just getting the ball, it felt like every time he got the ball, he was like near half court and was just trying his best just to get to the 3-point line. Right, that it was just such a hard process for him to be able to create anything. And Boswell was really the only guy that was a saving grace for, Illinois to be able to get any sort of penetration in this game, which maybe, is not a great precursor for once we get to the NCAA tournament. But again, Illinois is not going to face a team with that type of big physical presence like Michigan. And you mentioned it, Michigan has been able to kind of bully everybody until they went up against Duke. And that's why you have so much faith in this team once they get to the tournament, because they were a bad matchup, to use the classic term, for basically everybody in the country other than these teams that we're talking about. Arizona would be a team that can match up against them now with Koa Pete being back. Florida, obviously, with their front court can match up with them. Duke, as we've seen, can match up with them. And I think, even with Terrace Reed being hot and cold sometimes, he's been more hot than cold lately. And then Ryba's been a nice piece for them. They have a front court that can at least, match up with what Michigan's got going on. So I would take UConn into that conversation again. But outside of that, you're really struggling to find teams that can do it. I mean, that is why they're so dangerous. I'm worried about the LJ Kaysen injury. I think that's he's been a nice spark plug for this group, but that's not enough.
Great against Illinois too.
Great against Illinois. And what an effort play that he made when he got hurt. It didn't look great when it happened. It was really, tough to hear the news that he tore his ACL and he's out, because he had been, like I said, a nice piece for them. But again, Dusty May, you throw in how great of an acumen he has as a coach, and you throw in the size and the length and the physical big bodies that they have they could throw at you. They're just a really tough group to deal with, and I think they went to Illinois to send a message. I actually liked Illinois in that game. I was right there with you. I thought their offense would be able to flow a little bit more, but not on this day, and you got to give Lindenborg a lot of credit.
Yeah, no, he was clearly came in, and whatever the discussion was, whether it originated with Dusty or originated with him, there was clearly an understanding of like, I'm picking up Wagler. I'm guarding him as much as humanly possible, unless we get switched, whatever the case is. I'm on this dude the entire night. And yeah, it got to a point in the first half. Wagler had some buckets in the second half. Like he wasn't like totally out of the game or anything like that.
He's a great player. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's had worse performances this year.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like abominable or whatever, but he did look a little. There were numerous possessions. I mean, maybe a dozen possessions where you're just like, oof, this is a teenager playing against a grown adult man, and it who is his size and just as quick, and you could tell that was a clear strength, and that's part of what makes Michigan good. Is Lindeborg is one of the best defensive players in the country, super versatile, effective offensive player, and brings a level of size to oftentimes playing a three that most teams in the country just don't have. And there are plenty of times against Duke where he's playing, he's guarding Cam Boozer, and the matchup doesn't look out of whack. You know what I mean? That it makes sense. Obviously, Morris Johnson was great in his return to Illinois. It was really kind of the player of the game, and
felt emotional for him and for the team, which I thought was another nice piece for Michigan, that like they knew that it was going to be a tough day for Morris Johnson, and they really rallied around him, and he played great.
100%. Okay, we talked a little bit about Arizona. They were great tonight. They won the Big 12 tonight, which is saying something because it's a good conference and there are lots of tough home games. And they, a couple weeks ago now, won at Houston. They lost the 2 games in a row. They lost at Kansas on Big Monday, which, again, Bill Self is 41-0 at home on Big Monday, which is just ludicrous.
Every time you say that, I just laugh because it's so absurd.
I wish I knew he was good, but it wasn't until this season, like midway through the season, where I realized that those stats were a thing. And I wish if I was smarter, I'd be living on like a yacht off the coast of Monaco if I had picked up on these things like a month earlier, because it's just like auto bet Kansas on Monday night. Doesn't matter who they're playing. Money line. Doesn't matter.
Lock of the century.
Houston, Arizona, doesn't matter. But they lost the game at Kansas. They lost at home to Texas Tech, and you think they're maybe having a little bit of a wobble. No, beat BYU, win at Houston, win at Baylor. Kind of a scrappy game, but they got it done. Didn't play great defensively, and Baylor has some talent that they haven't won the games they needed to, but they're better than their whatever it is 15-14 record at this point. Beat Kansas at home on Saturday convincingly. Not really a close situation. Darren Peterson played pretty well, particularly in the first half, but just again a demonstration of the difference in level. And then completely handled Iowa State tonight, and an ugly start to the game. Got it done, and almost kind of an expected thing. Again, like coming into the game, I was kind of like, I feel like Arizona's probably going to win. They may or may not win convincingly, but it definitely fits with the trend that we again saw with Florida over the weekend. And you mentioned it, chippy game, like real, like there's some, I don't know what it is with Cal and Todd, but maybe a little bit of extra animus there. But both teams were fired up, and one team, which is Florida, that, we opened this season talking about them playing against Arizona the very first night of the season. And that was, the start of an evolution with Florida where we're like, oh, the guards, they're not as good as they were a year ago, obviously, but can they just be good enough? And the front court's great, but Thomas Hawk's kind of playing out of position, not really, but kind of, sort of, and it's just kind of a little bit awkward, and they can't shoot. They turn the ball over too much, blah, blah, blah. It's like those issues all feel gone now. These guys are just dominant. They figured it out, and they're getting enough from Fland and Xavier Lee and Klavjar. To be fair, I think he's probably in their best lineups statistically most of the time these days. That stuff just doesn't register anymore. It's like whether Xavier Lee or Boogie Fland play well individually or not, they're beyond that now.
Yeah, it's basically a plus if they play well. It's not a determining factor into why or if they win the game, which is really the turning point for this team. And I think Chinyelu, to me, was the one that really turned the corner for them as a group. Being able to be a lot more than just like an energy big, right? He's been a defensive monster.
He's a beast.
He'll probably be Defensive Player of the Year, I would assume. I mean, he obviously has played at that level. And Thomas Houck is a first-team All-American in my estimation. If not, he's a second-team All-American. And then Alex Condon has rounded into form as well. And when you got that three-headed monster, then, every time Clavchar hits a three or Boogie Flan gets downhill and gets to the bucket, you're just like, oh, yeah, that's nice. We'll take that. That's a nice little piece for us. But I don't know what this was with Golden and Calipari, trying to piece together where there could be some sort of connective tissue would be Boogie Flan. But that would be like if Boogie Flan left Florida to go to, Arkansas, not the other way around. So I don't know what it is. I also can imagine maybe like there were times that Todd Golden was at, a St. Mary's as an assistant or at San Francisco as a coach, and he was watching Calipari with all his talent, and he was saying to himself, my God, if I had that type of talent, I would absolutely dismantle teams. I can't believe how bad of a coach this guy is. And now he has that type of talent, and he's trying to send some sort of personal message that way. Regardless, he was a little out of pocket in my estimation, but you got game day there. Emotions are high. You're the national champs. You want to send a message because everybody before the game was like, Acuff should be in the conversation for National Player of the Year. Arkansas is a team to watch out for. And if you really look at the record of Arkansas against really top flight teams this year, they're 1-7, now 1-8 against Q1A teams. I know we love the Qs, we love the quads. So they haven't performed well against these top teams. And again, another example of that on the road at Florida. He ran up the score. I understand why Calipari felt some type of way about it. And, it was a little bit, to you, if we were in a situation with Blue Bloods, they'd be like, that's not very classy what Todd Golden did in that game. But again, this is the SEC. This is eat or be eaten world. And Arkansas, the Hogs got ate up in this game. And Florida, I think, was trying to really send a message after what UConn did that we should be the 4th 1 seed. And I think that's the other part of this too, where UConn and Florida are fighting for that last spot. Obviously, UConn beat Florida, but a totally different Florida team. The 5-4 Florida team that we saw is not the Florida team that we see now. And if they win the SEC tournament, I mean, obviously you and I can discuss what we think is fair in that situation, but I would argue Florida probably deserves to be that last 1 seed, and they look the part right now.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And the thing about Florida is they're kind of an extreme version of what we're seeing with all these top teams this year, which is, I don't want to say like threes are overrated. They're nice if you have them, but like Florida still can't shoot. They're still 30%, 30.8% from three on the season, which ranks 328th in Division I. Like they are not a good shooting team. And Fland is 21% from three on the year. Xavier Lee's 27%, despite taking, 165 attempts. Hawk is their best shooter besides Clavjar. I guess Clavjar is actually shooting like 40% from three, so he gives them a little bit of a boost there. But collectively as a team, they don't shoot the ball well, even if they've been a little bit better in SEC play. And it doesn't matter because they get so many easy buckets and they prevent so many easy buckets on the other end of the floor. And we see this with Duke. We see this, like Florida is second in offensive rebounding percentage, 7th in defensive rebounding percentage. Duke is right up there in both categories as well. Michigan 100% up there in that they're one of the best offensive and defensive rebounding teams in the country, one of the best interior scoring teams, and one of the best at preventing other interior scores. Like the rim talent on these teams this year makes it such that, if Michigan hits threes at their usual rate and they're a better 3-point shooting team than Florida, they'll blow you out by 40. If they don't, they can still win. And that's the thing with Florida too, is like they get hot, they hit some shots, and you might as well just call it a day.
They could beat you by 30. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they can do what they just did to Arkansas when they were 42% from three on just 19 attempts, which is not a ton for this era of college basketball, and it's interesting because you've got all these teams like Alabama being the prototype, but your Indianas of the world that are like, we play modern basketball now. We shoot a lot of threes. We understand the math, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you might actually be behind the curve. You actually need a ton of size to really compete at an elite level in college basketball right now. And, another team that had a statement win that we should cover quickly is UConn.
Mm-hmm.
You're right that they're in that conversation with the number 1 seed. And this was a big sort of redemptive night for UConn, for Alex Karaban. It felt like everything coming to a head, but they have some of this vibe as well, where they are a really good interior defensive team in terms of not allowing quality shots, like high level shot quality at the rim, and generating a fair amount of it themselves. And when they really turn it up, when they have everybody going, they can blow you out. Now, without taking anything away from the Huskies, I do want to say that was one of the weirder performances I've ever seen from a team competing for a conference title on the road against, another really good team. Like St. John's, the call with Robbie Hummel, he was just sitting there being like increasingly sort of befuddled and exasperated of like, they're not playing transition defense, as UConn just got layup after layup after layup in the first half. And then obviously the offense was going completely sideways. I mean, they finished with 40 points in whatever it was. What was it was 58 possessions. They finished with 40 points. So like 0.6, 0.7 points per trip. So the offense was the bigger issue in total, but the first 10, 15 minutes, it just looked like St. John's didn't want to play defense at all. And you understood why after the fact, even though he should have talked to the media, he didn't. Rick Pitino basically ghosted the post-game press conference and was just, very angry. And then they come out the next game and hammer Villanova, and you just wonder what the practices must have been like. But I don't know if I've seen a performance from a team with that has a chance to win a somewhat unlikely conference title, just totally ghost a night against a big team like that.
Yeah, Zuby, I mean, he said it after the Villanova game. He was like, at least, he got enough rest during the UConn game so he could play well today. I mean, that was his nice veiled shot at his best player, which is very Rick Pitino. But that's how it felt. It felt like St. John's went to the game. They got hit in the mouth by the Huskies, and then they were like, well, we'll just take our ball and go home here. Like, good, congratulations, you guys won this game. It just felt like they quit almost. And I know that's you can't really say that because then people read too much into it, but it did.
No, that's what it looked like, though.
Yeah, it looked like they were done. Yeah,
it looked like that. It was weird. It was very odd. And again, like that's never super been my problem with the St. John's team. It's more been about like, as we've talked about a gazillion times, like the roster build and how it actually all fits together, and whether they have the right sort of blend of skills, or if they're they overcorrected a little bit for perimeter shooting, but not enough, and don't have the playmaking on the top to make it all work. Blah 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 blah. But that was like an effort thing, and you go back and like you could take any clip from that game and compare it to any clip from the game in the Garden, and you see two different teams playing, which is very very odd. And who knows if that pops up again this season. But if you're thinking about, again, your bracket or your betting or whatever you're doing in the postseason, and you're looking at St. John's, it'll give me some pause, because that's like, this is a big game, guys. This is not like a random non-con game in early November where a team you should beat by 25, you beat by 8, and you didn't really put it together, and everybody was kind of lackadaisical. Like, this is a massive conference game, and it was just kind of a no-show. It was very, very odd. I don't really know what to make of it, especially given how well the Villanova game almost makes it worse. You know what I mean?
Right. Because it's like we see what you can't do. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're capable of this, but you weren't able to summon like a quarter of the effort for the game in Hartford, which is just weird. I still don't get it.
It kind of felt like, the game within the game was Terrace Reed came out and was just an absolute bulldog, and he played some of the best. I mean, he had 6 blocks in this game, 2 steals in this game, was incredible. And like the game within the game was him versus Zuby. He came out, completely set the tone, was like, I'm dominating this game. And then Zuby just kind of, it just seemed like he was out. I mean, he took 5 shots in this game, Yeah. And it's like, if there's any way to bounce back or find a way to get back into this game, it's like, well, we got to play through Zuby. And he just seemed like he was completely disconnected, which is why Rick Pitino said what he said after the game, which was a very fair point. And like you said, I mean, that kind of shows you can't really trust a team that when the going gets tough, they get going home. You know what I mean? Like at St. John's, it's like warm up the bus. We'll see you guys when we play Villanova. I mean, it was very strange.
Get us back to New York City. This is
Yeah,
not
we're done.
fun. We don't like this at all.
We don't like Hartford. Yeah.
It was like Zuby was like in that game. You know that gif of the guy who does like the peace sign and then fades and just like disappears. That was
He saw Terrace Reed throw down an early dunk and he was like, "All right, I'm out of here. Yeah, see you guys later."
I'm out. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not feeling this at all. This is not fun. So yeah, but a statement win for UConn and very much fits into this trend that we're talking about of teams either, you know, like fighting for a number one seed or at the very, very elite top of the sport separating themselves. So it's been an interesting trend to sort of observe. This past weekend also featured an opinion from Bruce Pearl that got people going, which about Miami of Ohio and whether or not they're one of the 68 best teams. And we can I'll read the quote right now. This is the quote from, as we know, Bruce is doing TNT desk analysis this season.
That desk is wild, by the way. Like that desk has provided just some insane quotes all season long.
They
Jamal
really
Mashburn saying "I love Duke" this past weekend, and then Kentucky fans going at his neck. I mean, there's just nowhere to go. Like that.
What did he have? He had one early in the year that we talked about that Mash said.
He said Cooper Flagg would be like the 6th pick in the NBA.
Oh, that's right.
Oh
yeah. God, yeah, that was a hot take. They're doing some of this now. They're that desk, which is brand new for this season, feels like they're doing a little bit of the like intentional hot take stuff. Like, where whether people come into the pre-show with an idea of what they want to say or not, there's an environment of like the producers being like, "Hey, yeah, man, just like fire it off. Who cares? Like, let's have fun with it." You know what I mean? Like, you know how this goes. Like, it's just, hey, don't be shy. Like, let these guys, get out there, get over your skis a little bit. It's fun. And Bruce absolutely did that on Saturday, where he said, if we're selecting the 68 best teams, then Miami is going to have to win their tournament to qualify as a champion, because as an at-large, they are not one of the best teams in the country. This continued actually on Monday. He went on Barstool and sort of said the same thing to Dave Portnoy, who I know is locked in on the bubble. I know he's a bubble boy for sure. But it's just really funny because, for starters, the Miami conversation is not a live conversation until they lose a game. And it hasn't been for like weeks now, right? It's just like, look, if you're undefeated and we're bracketing the field right now, you're getting in. There's no it doesn't matter.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Played.
You're in.
There's no matter it doesn't matter who you've played. Second piece, they are, we have metrics for this now, which are super helpful. One being wins above bubble, the one that the committee, again, has been screaming from the top of their lungs over the past however many weeks. And people at the NCAA, David Warlock and others, like when they did the bracket reveal a week ago.
Shout out to David, man. He's got a lot of people coming after him. He's working hard. I do not envy his position. My goodness. He's got so much BS to deal with.
I know he does. And he puts up with it like with a spirit of generosity, and
he really does. He shows a lot more grace than most people would. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. For anyone who thinks the NCAA is like this cabal of big bad evil people, you should hang out with David Warlock. He's like the GOAT. But the NCAA and committee people, when they did the mock selection thing a week ago, I talked about this on the Bracket Under Review show with Lucas and Rocco, of just like, they are screaming from the top of the rafters, put wins above bubble on your graphics. Please make it clear to your audiences this is an important metric for us. And Miami's, KenPom numbers and their predictive stats numbers are in the 80s essentially, but their wins above bubble is 32. The cutoff of an average bubble team is like 45. So that metric is essentially saying, even against this very bad schedule that Miami has played, and it is unquestionably bad, right? Your average bubble team would lose more games than this. Like being 29-0, even against a bad schedule, is super hard. And you see this with Gonzaga, who lost to Portland. You see this with lots of teams that have one or two random weird bad losses that just don't make a ton of sense. I mean, Florida started 5-4. Look at Florida now. You know what I mean? Like teams take losses. And that's the whole point of the metric is like, if you care about results, if you care about winning, then Miami has in many ways overperformed even what the average bubble team would do. And the committee has said numerous times, like Dan Gavitt said, who's the sort of NCAA vice president for basketball or whatever his actual title. Maybe he's president of basketball. I don't know the exact title. Sorry, Dan. Like when we make the field or when the committee makes the field, selection has a lot to do with your results, right? If you're going to get in or out. But then once we're seeding the field, we're looking a bit more at your other metrics, your predictive metrics. Like, if you're 80th in KenPom versus your 20th, that's going to have maybe a disproportionate effect on where you end up.
It informs the puzzle when you piece together the bracket. Yeah. But like to get in, the results matter. Right.
It's like, and they're comparing on very fine margins between who's the last fifth, number 5 seed versus who's the number 1 6 seed or whatever. And it's just like and putting all of the pieces together with geography and all the rest of it. But the larger point is that Miami has won against its schedule in a way that even though it's a bad schedule, you still have to honor it. And we now have, fortunately, metrics that the committee relies on, I think rightfully so, to honor that. And so there's just not really a debate. Like if this is the conversation I expected after Miami lost a game. But they won again. It was a close game. Travis Steele got fined by the MAC for knocking over a DJ's speaker and freaking out on the refs and doing everything else he was doing.
I didn't like that. That was bad karma.
The DJ handled it well.
He did. He seemed like you talk about grace. That guy had a lot of grace. I mean, that was expensive equipment. He seemed to just be kind of shocked and befuddled by it more than anything.
I'd like to know what's a speaker like that run? It's got to be up in the $1,000.
Yeah, I'm thinking like $1,200 or something. Yeah, somewhere in there.
I mean, I would not be pleased if someone walked in even in my PlayStation. If I had my PlayStation sitting on a table and someone pushed it over, I would not have responded as nicely as that DJ did. But again, this is the conversation I expected after Miami lost the game, and now we're having okay, as an at-large, they've got one loss. Can they lose another game in the MAC tournament? I would probably maybe say yes, but maybe not. Reasonable minds can differ about that topic, but firing this up when the team is still undefeated was hilarious to me, and I think got people pretty riled up, and kind of understandably so, because we're not doing that. They're 29-0. They're getting in the tournament as of right now.
It'd be one thing if it was like we're just having a bubble conversation, right? Like this is a bad faith argument made by someone who obviously has vested interest in trying to pick on somebody in the group. And he knows there's an argument to be made against Miami of Ohio because, again, they have not played any Q1 teams, which is a big talking point. But they also have not they have no one on their schedule that is a Q1 team, so it's not really their fault because the teams that are Q1 won't schedule them because they knew they had a veteran team coming back, and that could be a bad loss for them. They have one Q2 win, and that's something to point to. But again, they haven't lost a game. But Bruce Pearl, and the reason he did what he did is because he knows this drums up a conversation where you look at Auburn's wins. Auburn, who is coached by his son in his first year, definitely expected to be a lot better than a bubble team, but it would be a lot worse if they missed the tournament. So there's an angle here. We all know what the angle is. And the fact that we're all eating the trash is just a bad sign for where we are in the world. You know what I mean? It's just like, we know where this is coming from. It is in bad faith, but we still are letting it happen. And I do feel for Miami of Ohio. And obviously, like Travis Steele, not that the Bruce Pearl of it all is the reason. Their AD responded to Bruce Pearl with a pretty, visceral reaction to the whole thing, which is, you got to do that. You got to defend your program. But I do feel like it's almost getting to Travis Steele a little bit because he's like, I know we can't lose, because as soon as we do lose, we're out of the tournament, and that would just waste away what this incredible run has been for this team. And I really want him to get to the tournament. So the pressure is getting to him. That's why the speaker thing, I give him a little bit of grace on that. But yeah, the Bruce Pearl of it all, it just is so classic Bruce Pearl, because Bruce Pearl has always put one person first. And no, it's not Israel. It's Bruce Pearl. That is who he puts first. And that's just, that's just what it comes down to. Everybody knows what it is. If you know any coaches or even people around programs, you've heard, Bruce can be an incredible guy at certain times, but he also is going to do what's in the best interest of Bruce. And that whole thing is obviously in the best interest of him, someone close to him. Stephen Pearl, I think he probably would be like, I don't need you to go out there and campaign for me. I'm not going to speak for him. I don't know him at that level. But again, it was all in bad faith. We all can kind of see where it's coming from. And picking on Miami of Ohio, I do think that they're going to get in the tournament, especially if they're undefeated. And that just is common sense. And I know common sense isn't common these days, but my goodness, like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this conversation preemptively? It makes no sense.
Yeah, and like, look, again, this is where the wins above bubble stuff is useful. Like, yes, it's another alphabet soup metric that some people just will roll their eyes at or whatever. But if you care about results, I wrote this a couple weeks ago about Miami. Like, there's a like, the classic meme of like the one guy looking out on the sunny thing on the bus and the other guy looking at the the gray wall, and it's like analytics. NBA is the gray wall guy, and that boy nice is like looking out on the sun. That divide exists, but it's kind of like they won all their games, put them in the tournament. You know what I mean? That's the simple, easy, like
the results are that boy nice. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like
exactly, they are.
Undefeated.
But the fun thing is, we also have a metric that like backs it up, that the NCAA also uses, that you can just say like, look, a team. The average bubble team playing this bad schedule probably would have lost a few games, and Miami hasn't. So give them the credit where it's due. You mentioned the Miami AD David Saylor, who said, at Coach Bruce Pearl, you are flat out wrong about Miami basketball when you say we would finish last in the Big East. That's another thing he said too, that's tough.
Again, it's a bad faith argument. Like, you know what you're doing. You're trying your best to,
This is like what people said about Gonzaga. Like, put him in the Big Ten. Like, they had Chet Holmgren playing for the team, and it's like, well, you put him in the Big Ten, they'd have 8 losses. It's like, I don't think so, buddy. I really don't think so. The disrespect is awful, and you should not be near a TV studio covering the sport when you show your true colors. Even slipped in a "we" when talking about Auburn. Nice.
Yeah, the
work.
"we" was funny.
The "we" was funny, and it is like, look. Bruce Pearl's not currently the coach of Auburn, but his son is. And yes. I love my son very much. And I like to think that I wouldn't do exactly this if my son, like if I had the possibility to influence how my son was perceived or the result of his first year in a very important job that could net him a lot of money and make him an important figure in his profession, blah, blah, blah. I like to think that I would just hang back and let him do his own thing, but I can't promise that I would. You know what I mean? I really love my son. I
get it. I get where he's coming from.
I'd probably get out there. I'd probably get out over my skis too a little bit for him. But that's what it is, And also Bruce Pearl is personally invested in this because he engineered what Auburn's coaching situation is currently, right? If he had stepped down in the spring after the Final Four, if he had done a press conference after the Final Four or a week later where he said, I've built this program, but it's my time to step down. I want to pursue other opportunities where I can tweet whatever I want to tweet all the time about lots of very important political issues. Whatever, man, go do your thing. But he stepped down when he stepped down. Because he knew that his handpicked successor, who is also his son, would be given the job and at least given a chance to try and carry on the program forward. And so he is not only just invested because it's his son. His son is not a coach at a random program, mid-major program, like out of nowhere. He's invested because he also engineered the situation, and it kind of needs to work out, or some of his goodwill at Auburn, not most of it, not even 80% of it, but some of it will get chipped away a little bit, right? If this just ends up being a disaster. It hasn't been a disaster for Auburn by and large this season. They've been fine. And I think, I wrote early in the year not early, like a few weeks ago on my newsletter, like I kind of want to poll where Auburn fans are right now, because coming into the season, looking at the talent on the roster and the way guys have played, and Pettiford's not been that great this year by and large. You go back to late January, they were 14-7, really good schedule, like
beat
good
Florida
underlying
at the
metrics.
end of January.
Yeah, they're basically like top 25 in most of the predictive metrics, and looking like a pretty solid, if flawed, team. But relative to their roster talent, looked like Stephen Pearl's doing a pretty good job. They lost 5 in a row, beat Kentucky at home by 1. Mark Pope freaked out about that result. That was a dicey one. And then they've lost 2 since at Oklahoma, and then obviously Saturday at home to Ole Miss, and things are falling apart. And you can get by on the bubble as a team with a really tough schedule up to a point. But if the losses really stack up, then you're done. And there's every chance, LSU's a solid team. Like they're not going to go to the tournament, but they can beat you, in Auburn on Tuesday night, tonight, as people are listening to this. And then they go to Alabama on the last game of the season on Saturday. That could be another 2 losses, and then you're done. You're under 500, right? You're not even really a bubble team anymore unless you do something in the SEC tournament. So the extent you're right about eating the garbage, the extent to which this got, I even got baited. I retweeted it, just like another great take from Bruce, which is like a pithy, dumb comment to make on the internet or whatever. But it was just like that.
Yeah.
There are very few people, I think, across college basketball fandom, people who really like the sport, who are interested in Miami not being in the tournament. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no constituency for that unless you're an Auburn fan or a fan of a mediocre team on the bubble. And even a lot of those people, like I bet if you pulled Indiana fans and they were like, well, it's up to it, it's either Indiana or Miami, they'd be like, man, screw it. Just put Miami in the tournament. I don't want to watch this team anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just like the constituency for this is very limited, and it's super self-interested. And it was frustrating to see it become as much of a conversation as it did, because again, important reminder, Miami still not lost a game. Let's have this conversation if and when they lose a game. And, if they lose 1 game in the conference tournament, I still think they'll get in pretty easily. Like if they have 2 losses, then we'll have this discussion, and they may be seeded with 0 losses as an 11 seed or whatever, maybe a little bit lower than people think. But look, man, if that team is a 1-loss team going in, with a loss in the conference tournament or whatever the case may be, they're getting in the field, and people just, the Auburn supporters of the world just need to cope with it, because
and if
it's not
they're
going to be any other way.
Yeah, and if they're one of those teams that is putting Dayton and they're undefeated, I even think that will be a little egregious. You know what I mean?
It might be, yeah.
Putting them in the first 4 when they're undefeated, I feel like is a little bit of a bad precedent. But at least they're in the tournament, and I think that if you're undefeated, there's no doubt that you should be in the tournament. And if you're Auburn, win at Alabama. First win against LSU at home, but win at Alabama on Saturday, and then now we're having a conversation again about results, and that's a good result, and that's a great win, and it leads you into the SEC tournament where you also can make some noise and get some wins and get things rolling in the right direction. Again, results matter, and like you said, Ohio State, Indiana, California, all these other, like, not one of them has said anything about Miami of Ohio. Like, there was a very directed effort here, and we all sniffed it out pretty easily.
Yeah. Indiana fans are booing their own players. Like, they don't. they're
a football school.
They're not.
They don't care. They're like,
it's a football school. Yeah. It's actually that was the most. We're actually still a basketball school thing of the past weekend was maybe of the season with Indiana was like, actually, no, we're going to boo one of our own players because we're so frustrated with how the season is falling apart right now. The Indiana fans still got it in a weird
they're too smart for their own good. They know bad basketball, and they will point it out. That's for sure.
Let me just say, booing your own players, it may feel good in the moment. It's counterproductive. Poor Reed Bailey. He got booed when he was checking into the game and looked like a broken man for the rest of his minutes on the floor. You could just see he was terrified to make a mistake because he knew he would get booed again. And it's not going to help. I think it was like a few people in the student section. It wasn't like a widespread, 2 minutes hate or anything like that against Reed Bailey in Assembly Hall. But Not a good look. Anyway, that's the Miami discussion. Look, man, they're going to get in the tournament. Someone who's not going to be in the NCAA tournament, now there's a transition for you, is Chad Baker-Mazara, who has been dismissed from the USC basketball program, ending one of the great, or, well, certainly one of the college basketball careers of the past decade. Guy's 26. He played for Duquesne. He transferred to San Diego State. He got kicked off the team at San Diego State for not doing any schoolwork, and basically Brian Dutcher just being like, I can't deal with this anymore. Please be gone. Went to JUCO for, I think, 2 years, right? And then, learned his lesson, came back, then went to Auburn, had quality performances at Auburn, was part of a really, really, really good Auburn team last year next to Janai Broome, and still nonetheless had his moments at Auburn that were crazy, and then transferred to USC this season where he was the leading scorer, having really a good individual season, but got hurt against Nebraska on Saturday on a hard fall. Went to the locker room, came back out, sat down at the end of the bench, but then eventually moved to the crowd. And apparently this annoyed USC's coaching staff. Now, Ryan Karchi of the LA Times, who's the USC beat writer there, who does a great job covering that program, football and basketball, said that reported that the decision to dismiss him from the team was a collection of, it was not an isolated incident, a person familiar with the decision said, but not authorized to discuss it publicly, told the Times, rather the culmination of a season's worth of issues that boiled over after the second half of Saturday's home loss to Nebraska. This is both the most expected thing in the world and also kind of sad, because I've become fond of Chad Baker-Mazara in a very weird way. And maybe I've become fond of him because the stuff that he's done has made him such a outlier figure in college basketball. The fact that he's 26, the fact that he's older than Luka Doncic, which I will bring up for the rest of my life. It's just one time I watched a college basketball player who was older than one of the best 5 NBA players, one of the best players in the world. And I could bring it up constantly because it feels like Luka's been in the league forever. He went to an NBA finals. He's not that old. You know what I mean? It's just a remarkable journey for Chad Baker-Mazara, and we should all celebrate it now that it's apparently officially over.
Yeah, there are not, obviously we have a lot of people that just give you coach speak, or they give you what you're supposed to say in a press conference, and they act the way that they're supposed to, and they kind of go through the motions. If there's one person that would never go through the motions, that would be quote unquote, regular, normal, whatever you want to call it. It would be Chad Baker-Mazara. He's always kind of gone and moved at the beat of his own drum. And I think Bruce Pearl even said this. He was like, he has good days and he has bad days. And we've seen the good days of Chad Baker-Mazara. He can be a superstar player. I mean, he's super gifted. He has shown incredible flashes of talent. He's also shown incredible flashes of stupidity. And, we don't know which one you're going to get. And it does feel like, USC's at the point this season where, things have gone a lot drastically different than, obviously Musselman expected, and Musselman's been piecemealing these teams together, and he really wants to get something afoot there at USC. Hasn't quite clicked quite yet. He thought Chad Baker-Mazara was a big get in the portal. On paper, it was, but the paper doesn't always lead to production. And I'm excited, to see what the actual answer is here. I don't even know if excited. I'm intrigued to figure out what actually went on with this, because again, the saga of CBM has always been its own version of a college basketball story, where they're unique stories. We don't get these types of things anywhere else, and they're usually fascinating. I appreciated that Bruce Pearl stood up for him and said that he thought he was going to get a chance at the next level in the NBA. I hope he does get a chance. I know you mentioned the Gilbert Arenas thing. I didn't see that because he deleted it, but he obviously came to bat for Chad Baker-Mazara. Elijah, his son, is on the team. Just a very strange story. Musselman is very emotional. Chad Baker-Mazara is very emotional. Putting two and two together there, I would assume that, the emotions got the best of probably both of them, and that's why we got to this point. And that is, the behind the scenes story here is probably a fascinating one, and I'm sure we'll get it at some point. But we're not going to see him play college basketball anymore, and we did not know how it was going to end. But this somehow feels like a fitting end for Chad Baker-Mazara. All things said and done, coming off a Final Four last year, that's the high, and then getting kicked off the team, that's the low. Like there is seemingly no in between with what he has going on when it comes to college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is how foreseeable this was, not just from the outside, but among the participants, right? So in the summer or the spring when, I guess it was almost the summer, because he was a pretty late get, but, Musselman said, let me find the quote. It's pretty good. Oh, in May, he said, "There will never be a dull moment. Might be that I've got a little more on my plate." So Musselman knows. I mean, obviously, like everyone knows, coaches talk about players. It's not, I mean, with Baker-Mazara, it was just straight out in the open. He had numerous moments with Auburn that were, he had moments that didn't rise to the level of like a national news story, but he also did have those moments where he like got ejected or started a fight or whatever. But he also had a moment last year in the Final Four. I remember sitting literally right across from the Auburn bench, sitting courtside, the Saturday of the Final Four. He gets subbed out at one point in the game. It was totally innocuous. It was just like, we're switching up the lineup the same way Auburn basically always did. It wasn't like in response to a bad play. He didn't, he didn't get chewed out. He just got subbed out, went and sat on the bench. And I sat and watched him because he was like kind of remonstrating a little bit, like on the bench, like kind of clearly he was pissed off about it. And the kid who came in for him, it was like a guard, whose name, it wasn't Pettiford, it was somebody else who came in for him, missed a three like the next time down, and Baker-Mazara was like on the bench laughing and like pointing, like, you see, and it's just like, dude, you're in the Final Four as a number 1 seed. What are you doing right now? Like, this is the type of stuff you do in like November, even if you're that kind of person, which, you don't be, just be a good teammate and root for your team or whatever. But even if you're that kind of personality, it's like, typically guys put that away when you're in the like the national semifinals, and you have a chance to win a national title 72 hours later or whatever. And I'm just like, this is just bizarre, out of body stuff. Before he went to USC, he said, with him and Musselman, that if you put crazy and crazy together, it might work.
That's right.
Which is an all-timer. And you know what? For a minute there, it did. Like he's averaging what, like 18, 5 and 4 or something. But he had.
And Musselman is crazy. Like, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like I have seen Musselman. He is insane. I mean, and in good ways, and in not so good ways sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Musselman is I think would probably be happy to admit that as well. Like he's a different kind of dude too.
Mm-hmm.
And that in a combustible way. I mean, he like wants to change his roster every year and like figure it out on the fly. And that worked at Arkansas when he was kind of on the forefront of the transfer stuff. And it's maybe not working quite as well. And they didn't have the season they wanted last year. So maybe his expectations of going big in the transfer portal this year weren't quite there. But I mean, Baker-Mazara was a big get, and just in terms of pure talent, like whatever his sort of damaged goods reputation is in terms of his personality, like he's a really good player.
And Arenas was a big get. I mean, Arenas is a really, really talented player. McDonald's All-American.
And look, USC's fundamental problem this year, whatever is going on behind the scenes with Baker-Mazara, their fundamental problem is that their biggest transfer, Rodney Rice, got injured after 6 games. That's the original sin of the season. That is not even a sin because no one actively.
And Elijah was hurt to start the year. Like they had 2 huge injuries, right? So it is explainable.
Elijah Arenas played 11 games. You know what I mean? Like they and most of those games they won, to be fair, or most of the games he didn't play in, they won, to be fair. But they have trended in a negative direction lately, and it's this is maybe not the most surprising thing in the world. I will say it was quite surprising for me to see Gilbert Arenas in his since deleted Instagram post / tweet that he put out, saying that again, I need to make sure I've got the exact quote here, that I don't know who he cussed out, but get over it, Gilbert said in a passionate rant posted to Twitter. I'm reading this from BOAS on Arkansas Sports, bestofarkansassports.com. I don't know who he cussed out, but get over it, the elder Arenas said in a passionate rant posted to Twitter. When you're the best player on the team, whatever you say, you're right. If he says those redacteds suck, he's right. Give him the ball and get the F out of the way. That's the offense. Don't think that's the best basketball advice.
It's the most Gilbert advice I've ever heard, though. That's how Gilbert viewed it. He's like, I'm the best player. I do what I want.
Don't tell me what to do. I'm the best player. Gilbert wasn't too okay. Here's another quote. We're supposed to be playing in the tournament, man. Now we got to watch this junior varsity ass team playing by their goddamn selves. If I'm Gilbert Arenas' son, I'm like, hey, man, I'm still on the
These
team.
are my teammates. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you please stop? Like, look, I mean, this is, it's actually kind of, it's kind of great. Cause like, this is like what you hear parents say about coaches and teams and players and stuff. Like, and you get that you can get that if you just sit courtside, like next to the family section sometimes, of just like, you can just hear parents complaining about it. It's like youth sports. It's just with higher stakes. It's just like parents are fired up and they think their kid's the best player on the team, even if he's the 10th guy off the bench or whatever. And they say this stuff all the time. It's just Gilbert Arenas is Gilbert Arenas. He was a very good NBA player who now has like an independent media profile or whatever. But just an incredible situation all around. And look, USC now almost certainly, unless they win their last 2 games in the regular season, they play at Washington, which is not a big of a trip for them as it is for most Big Ten teams. And then they play UCLA at home, which is obviously a big rivalry game. And they got beat bad in the last one, February 24th. They're almost certainly not going to make the NCAA tournament now. And so then you're 2 years in a row with Muss of this big hire that they made, and it's not going good. And you just kind of wonder where things go from here. And I the same way I wonder where Chad Baker-Mazara as a 26-year-old, as a professional human being / potential professional basketball player is going to go from here.
Yeah, Musselman is the fascinating one because when Infield left, they were like, yes, we'll drive you to the airport, get him out of here. But Infield has had demonstratively better success at USC, just putting head-to-head so far from Musselman. And that's obviously we live in a different timeline. And, college basketball is vastly different than it was when Infield was there. But Infield's done great so far at SMU, been able to figure out that team. They'll be in the NCAA tournament. So, it's just kind of a lesson. Be careful what you wish for sometimes. And also the headlines don't always necessarily, translate to production. I think Musselman will figure it out. Again, we had the injuries to write this season off a little bit, but I do feel a little bit for USC fans because they thought that they were getting, the Arkansas Musselman experience. And so far it has not been anything close to that.
No, it hasn't. And again, like the postmortems on this season will 100% focus on Baker-Mazara, but their 5-star prospect, Elijah Arenas, who I think is a good player, but like not just because of the injury. Like we don't put him in the same category as a lot of these other guys, even though he's a 5-star player. Like there's a cutoff, and he's not in the, we're not talking about Darius Acuff here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
We're
talking more like Malachi Marino level, which is like a really good player. Yeah.
Nice player. The NBA draft guys are kind of like, oh, I'm kind of,
I'm intrigued.
I see the vision
tools.
Here. Yeah. But they're not like head over heels. Kendrick Perkins isn't saying you need to take him number 1 on Get Up or whatever show he's appearing on at any given time. But,
not yet. He will. Don't you worry.
He could get there. But like, look, man, Elijah Arenas is 20% from 3, 41% from 2. his offensive rating is 93.1. He's taken 32% of the shots when he's on the floor.
Yeah, he is definitely an Arenas. Yeah, if you didn't have the last name, you'd be like, who does the shot diet remind you of?
Like why is this guy taking these many shots? But he's a freshman who's played 11 games. Like he could get there, right?
Hit a game winner against Penn State. Yeah,
I don't know where his draft stock is or what it's like, but assuming he stays in college basketball for another year, whether it's at USC or elsewhere, like you can see it. Like there's stuff there. Like he's 6'6" playing point guard, basically. Like you can get your head around it.
Also, but, like, the nicest kid, by the way. Like he like shook everybody's hands, looked him in the eye, asked their name. Like I was shocked at how great of a kid he was. I literally told him, I was like, "You're
at the McDonald's game."
Yeah, the McDonald's game. I was just like, "Your dad definitely told you this is a job interview." He was like, "No, I'm just a nice, I'm just a nice guy. I just want to get to know everybody." I was like, "Okay, all right."
I'm just chilling. Yeah. I mean, look, man, like he could get there, whatever. And he's been trying to do a lot. You can see the sort of pressure mounting a little bit in terms of just like what guys need to do. But like Baker-Mazara was also taking 30% of the team's available shots when he was on the floor. It's not like he wasn't getting enough touches, and he scored a bunch of points and rebounded well and was playing fine. But the bottom line is they needed Rodney Weiss. That was the guy, and he got hurt after 6 games and hasn't been available. And that's kind of where USC's season fell down, particularly as it get late in the season and like the emotional stuff with Musselman and Baker-Mazara. You can still imagine a world in which Rodney Weiss is out there putting up like 19 points a game, chilling and kind of oblivious to the emotional disaster unfolding around him. But anyway, I want to take a moment in this podcast to just say, like, see you later, Space Cowboy, to Chad Baker-Mazara.
Salute.
Like, one of a kind. We got to salute him. We got to say farewell. I don't think he's available to be picked up by any teams as a free agent just before the tournament.
Wikipedia said he was the #1 pick in the Puerto Rico Basketball League. So I don't know when that draft happened. I don't know if that's the reason why he's kicked off the team, but that would be very Chad Baker-Mazara that he is left to go be the star player in Puerto Rico. So
I mean, yeah, that I could see that. It could be another path back into the NBA one day.
Also, Wikipedia easily editable, so that could be a USC fan that's like, this is the perfect send off,
or an Auburn fan, because even Auburn fans don't like him anymore. They loved him for so long, and then the way he left and made negative comments about.
It was like Stifler. It was like, he's our asshole, and then like he left the friend group, and they're like, no, he's just an asshole,
Yeah,
that's kind of how it worked.
All right, we're good now. Just a one of a one, like just an all timer. And look, man, the guy's 26. I'm not sure what the NBA prospect really is, and regardless of what Bruce Pearl says, I think we're looking at some various 1-year deals in Europe for the foreseeable future. But you never know. He could go to Europe, crush it, and come back as like a 30-year-old. And Sam Presti's like, I like his tools.
Yeah, that would have to be the case. Like the Spurs or the Thunder somehow like buy into Chad Baker-Mazara and he becomes a star. And
all of our structures are prepared to deal with the whirlwind individual that we.
Anything is possible with Chad Baker-Mazara. That's what we know.
100%. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us this week. There's a lot to get to as we go through. Again, last week of the regular season. Big stuff happening. We will recount it all, do a little postseason primer next week. We'll get prepped for that. It's going to be a fun final week of college, but I can't believe it's already the last.
Right, we have conference tournaments. I mean, they're all
happening.
I mean, yeah.
Did you see the Horizon League bracket? By the way,
yeah,
it's the most lopsided bracket. They're calling it the most lopsided bracket of all time. This is where I could easily flash. I wish I could easily flash up an image on the screen because I'm looking at it right now. But it's like Cleveland State plays IU Indy in the first round. That's the play-in. That was tonight. That was Monday night. So tonight as we're recording, last night as you're listening. And then the first round happens on Wednesday. That's most of the rest. That's every other team in the league. And then the second worst seed first round winner plays the worst seed first round winner in the second round. And then there's semifinals featuring the best seed first round winner. Like, this is it pure madness. The
Cleveland State won, by the way. Shout out to Cleveland State.
Okay,
Nice
shout
win.
out Cleveland State. I'm glad we got that in there. Thank you for checking that. The extent to which these conferences will come up with the most unhinged brackets to just avoid giving their regular season champion the the automatic bid because they need the money from the conference tournaments, like a significant moneymaker. It's like the West Coast Conference, which also soon will be saying "See you, Space Cowboy," is like, if you're Gonzaga or St. Mary's, you're in the semifinals already, and then the rest of the teams just have to fight it out, like the dregs in Snowpiercer or something. But this is a next level with the Horizon League that everybody should go check it out. It's beautiful, it's chaotic, and this is what we're in store for over the next few weeks here. So I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to talking with you next week. Tate, thank you again for being here.
Of course, can't wait. And the money of these conference tournaments, they drive you to crazy scenarios. And man, you just go through the list of all these different conferences, and there's so many great storylines. I mean, and so many, a lot of them are wide open. You know what I mean? Patriot League, Horizon League, like there's a lot for the taking. So I'm excited to watch them all. ASUN, I can talk myself into a lot of these conference tournaments. So I'm excited to have those. And then also rivalries this weekend. Just a great last week of college basketball. So I'm excited.
Yeah. One more thing about the Horizon League tournament just before we go, because it relates to next week's podcast. So the first round after the play-in, that was Monday night, March 2nd. First round's March 4th. The second round is March 8th. That's Sunday. The semifinals are March 9th. So we will know the winner of the second best seed first round winner versus the third best seed first round winner. That's 9:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN2. Monday, March 9th. So we'll hit you guys as soon as that game's over. We'll be coming in hot with the second best seed first round winner versus third best seed first round winner analysis.
Oh my God.
Does this make sense to you?
Yeah. I'm looking at it now too. Now I'm just as this is beautiful.
It's like David Lynch. It's like if you let David Lynch design an NCAA tournament bracket. This is what he would come up with. Like, I'm going to make the most ridiculous bracket you've ever seen. Okay. All right. That'll do it for us tonight. Thank you all for listening. Thank you again to Tate for being here. Thank you to Corey, our producer, for putting it all together. And thank you to Trilly Donovan and everybody at Basket Under Review. And thanks Homefield too. We will see you guys next week. College basketball. We are in the mix right now. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.